good to be with you again. If you haven't seen me before, my name is Weyls. I'm a priest of the Diocese of Olympia, former rector of St. Andrew's in the Green Lake neighborhood of Seattle. But these days, I'm Teresa's boss. I'm the interim manager of spiritual care for all of the Providence Swedish hospitals in our area. Good to be back with you. This week, I learned a new phrase. Maybe you already know it. Doom scrolling. Doom scrolling. You know what it is? It's the act of continuously scrolling through bad news, hour after hour, day after day, unable to stop or step back. It's an obsession with learning about the bad things that are happening in our world. And some people really struggle with this. And I think we'll all agree that there is no dearth of bad news in our world today. Sometimes the bad things that happen feel pretty darn overwhelming. So I think we are hungry for some good news. As Christians, of course, we know that we're called to be bearers of good news in every situation, no matter how terrible or seemingly hopeless. We are called to hold out the life-giving, death-defying, world-changing promise of the gospel. In fact, the Greek word for gospel means good news. The promise that a good and a loving God is even now, in the midst of horrible crisis, that God is leaning toward us with love and mercy and justice and healing. It's the promise that God's saving, reconciling, and liberating power is available for all people in all times and at all places. That's the good news of the gospel. So why doesn't Jesus proclaim that today in the passage we just heard? Am I the only person that thinks that Jesus sounds kind of mean? Did he actually cast a racial slur toward that Canaanite woman by essentially calling her a dog? He certainly does not seem to be proclaiming God's inclusive love to this foreigner. So let's look at the story more closely. As Matthew describes the scene, Jesus and his disciples are far from home. They are in the region of Tyre and Sidon. In other words, they're not around Jews. They're in Gentile country. A foreign country where everyone is ethnically and religiously different from them. Everyone is other. A Canaanite woman approaches them and starts shouting, "Have mercy on me, Lord, Son of David, for my daughter is tormented by a demon." Any of you who are parents know what it's like to have a sick child and how you will make a fuss and do lots of things in order to try to get help for your suffering child. Jesus definitely hears the woman's cry, but he doesn't answer her at all. He ignores her. That feels pretty mean to me. The woman, however, is tenacious. She loves her daughter. She needs help. She's in crisis. She is not afraid to make a scene. So she keeps shouting until the disciples ask Jesus to send her away for being such a nuisance. And finally, Jesus looks at her and he explains, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." Another mean thing to say. Still, the woman is undeterred. She falls to her knees and she says out of desperation, "Lord, help me." And Jesus doesn't help. Instead, he answers with what I think are the harshest words in the gospel. Words that hurt no matter how we try to soften them. He says, "It is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." WTF, Jesus? Did he just liken this foreign woman who's desperate and in need because her child is sick, did he liken her to a dog? Yeah, he did. And I don't see any other way around it. And what happens next is remarkable. The woman turns that slur right back around and throws it back at Jesus as she says, "Yes, Lord, but even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the master's table." The table. She mentions the table. She brings up the concept of the table. It's a brilliant response. She's basically calling Jesus a hypocrite. She points out that he is not being true to his own boundary-breaking, taboo-busting, division-destroying ministry of table fellowship. He's not doing what he has done before and told others to do. After all, isn't he the Messiah who eats with tax collectors and prostitutes? Isn't he the rabbi who breaks bread with sinners? Aren't his disciples the ones who earn the Pharisees' contempt for eating with unwashed hands? The table is precisely where Jesus has been proclaiming to the world who God is. Jesus' message to the world happens at the table. And so the table is precisely where this outsider, this foreigner, this outcast, this other calls Jesus out. As if to say, "Lord, where is my good news? Where is my place at the table? When will your goodness be good enough for me and my daughter?" To me, what this Canaanite woman is saying is, if you are the one you say you are, how can you be content while anyone goes hungry in the vicinity of your table? The good news is here somewhere. I know it's here. You already have it. Now let it come to fruition. She says, "Look harder, Jesus. Push further. See better. Believe that there is enough good news to go around. Expand that circle, Jesus. Your message is not just for the house of Israel. Dissolve those boundaries. Widen the table. Preach your good news to me." And this is the best part of the story. Jesus stops being mean and he listens. He learns. He changes. Jesus accepts the instruction of the woman who challenges him. He allows her, the ethnic, religious, and gendered other, to school him in his own gospel that he has been preaching. He allows her to deconstruct his bias and his entitlement, to break the barrier of his prejudice and widen the circle of his compassion. The Jesus who never loses a verbal contest with anybody else in Scripture sits back in amazement and he concedes the argument to an audacious female foreigner. He says, Woman, great is your faith. Let it be done to you as you wish. It's in that moment of insight for Jesus that the woman's daughter is healed instantly. To me, that is so symbolic. Insofar as Jesus is fully divine and fully human, Jesus grew and learned and meditated more deeply upon what his mission was in the world. He became more aware of his mission. And Jesus changes. He allows a perspective foreign to his own to move him from an attitude of narrow-mindedness into an attitude of inclusion. He allows himself to be humbled, to be rearranged, even remade. And the Canaanite woman's faith and her persistence teach him that God's purpose for Jesus is bigger than he had even imagined, and that there is enough of him to go around. My friends, our world might have less bad news if we could listen to the urgent challenge of the other. What if I had the humility to listen long enough so that I could learn what only a vulnerable outsider could teach me? What would it be like to insist on good news for people who don't look, speak, behave, or worship like we do? Right now, we are living through times that are so fraught and so tenuous that everything depends on exactly how good the good news really is. It's not good enough if it's just good for me, or for the people who look and think like me, or the people that I already happen to like or love. Is it good news yet for the brain-dead drug addict that is in the ICU that I serve? Is it good news yet for the starving, or the incarcerated, or the unemployed, or people without homes? Dare I even say, is it good news yet for the Russian aggressors against their Ukrainian neighbors? Is it good news yet for the people that I have been conditioned all my life to ignore? If the answer is no, then we have some work to do. Remember, Jesus himself has gone ahead of us, widening the gates and throwing open the doors to welcome the voice of the despised foreigner. He has modeled a kind of listening and learning that should bring us to our knees. He has shown us that compassion can be cultivated, and that we can grow into greater and more inclusive love. He has left us with a bottom line that we ignore at our peril. If it's not good news for everyone, then it's not good enough yet. Period. Proclaim that, for that is very good news indeed.